Hello and welcome, everyone. We're excited to have you all attending today. I'm Jim Olson, Assistant Executive Director of the NTCA, and I hope you and your families are healthy and safe. Today's webinar is titled The Current and Future Use of Gauge Porcelain Tile Panels. We will cover the definitions and terminology associated with gauge porcelain tile panels, benefits of using and specifying this type of technology applications, as well as the system requirements and how to optimize the use of these products. Our sponsor for this presentation is Bostik. Please look for Bostik's advertisements in Tile Letter Magazine and our many digital platforms. For those of you who have attended these yearly webinar series that we have, you know that I have some business to take care of. So today's webinar will be muted. Please use the questions area on your computer to type in your questions. We will answer your questions at the end of this presentation. All of our webinars are available to watch at any time on our NTCA YouTube channel shortly after the webinars are presented. Please go to the NTCA YouTube channel, subscribe, and you'll be notified of all upcoming NTCA videos, including all technical webinars, giving you easier access to watch the current and past programs at your convenience. We will no longer have them archived on the NTCA website. If the audio on your computer is poor, call the number on your invite and listen on your phone. All right, here we go. Today's speaker, Abell. He is the lead green associate market manager for Bostik's tile and stone installation systems, sealants, and surface preparation products. Abell, a graduate of University of Kentucky, learned the tile business from the ground up, working at Mies Tile and Marble in Lexington, Kentucky, before starting with Bostik. Adam, I want to welcome you. I look forward to a great program. Thank you.
Jim, thank you very much, and thank you to the entire NTCA for putting together these educational opportunities for the marketplace. We really appreciate the opportunity to provide a little bit of insight, hopefully educate some people on some new opportunities, new products, and new categories for you to build your businesses upon. So with that being said, we've prepared a presentation today that is an overview of the current and future use of gauge porcelain tile panels. As Jim alluded to, the overview begins with some history of tile, a little bit about the definitions in this category, and then the applications and system requirements that can allow for optimization of these types of systems. So with that being said, we're going to dive right into the essentially the history of tile applications, and you'll see that some of the earliest known examples of tile were actually in the mosaic format, and these were made of a variety of different materials found in a temple in Mesopotamia, and these date back to the second half of the 3rd millennia BC. So this type of overall process for tile is very much something that has a tremendous amount of history to it. These early iterations were colored stones, shells, and ivory, and a little bit more closely emulated mosaic than tile. But you'll still find through some excavations in the same region, evidence of the first glazed tiles dated to around 1500 BC. So you'll find that Roman influence resulted in some mosaic patterns and patterning to tile years later. If you follow tile at all, which most people that are joining this likely have as well, then you saw in Smithsonian this year where an ancient Roman mosaic floor was unearthed beneath an Italian vineyard. So this particular floor is multicolored tiles and dated back to around the 3rd century AD. So my purpose in showing this and talking a little bit about it is essentially to reinforce the fact that tile is extremely durable. You have installations that are standing for thousands of years. You have installations that essentially still look incredible despite being preserved underneath feet of soil for years and years. So tile is a totally permanent finish, and I think it's a very fitting quote that's in the back of the TCNA handbook and a number of TCNA's efforts. And it calls out that because tile is a permanent finish, the lowest bid should not be the driving factor, but rather who is the most qualified to perform the scope of the specified work. So when I read that, I think of, from a specification standpoint, specifying the right type of installer for any given project, And then I think about it from the installer perspective, that you have to be that installer. You have to be the installer that is the most qualified to be able to perform the scope of the work. So keep working towards that if you're on the install community, and if you're on the specification community, in the specification community, then please look to continue your specifications of those types of installers. So a little bit more about the history of tile, we'll call it. You know, people are pretty aware of the different types of tiles that exist in the marketplace. The porcelains, which are such a vast majority of the market in these days, also known as impervious tiles, or actually in some cases known as impervious ceramic. So you can even call porcelain a subset of ceramic in some cases. Then you have the ceramic category, which is a very broad name covering vitreous, semi-vitreous, and non-vitreous tiles, which essentially refer to the level of absorption from product to product. You'll find the pressed tiles, which is a method for manufacturing a ceramic or porcelain tile. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the coming couple of slides. There's mosaics, which are a variety of different formats. So you'll see mosaic tiles in both a paper face mounted product. You may see them in mesh mounted backings. You may find them in applications that are dot mounted as well, depending on the use or the use that's desired for the mosaic. You'll find quarry tiles, which are made in an extrusion process, which are still the favorite tile of the commercial kitchen, as well as the firehouses across the country. You'll see a lot of those. Glazed wall tiles, which are essentially a type of ceramic tile in most cases that have a finish on them that is not necessarily built for scratch resistance. It's built more for aesthetic. It doesn't have a lot of point load resistance, so it's not really a suitable product for floors, but nonetheless a very durable and long-standing product for wall type applications. Glass tiles as well. So you see the glass tiles, and within that category, there's a variety of different subsets. There's a category of low temperature coated glass, cast glass, or fused glass within that overall segment. And then you'll find the wide assortment of natural stone tiles that exist in the market that show anything from the igneous stones to metamorphic and sedimentary stones, a variety of products that are silica based or calcium based. So anything from marble, travertine, limestone, slates, basalt products, or granites, and they all have a variety of different types of feel to them as well. So there's a lot to be said on the facets of the different tiles that exist in the marketplace, a whole lot of different types that are available. And then there's also essentially a brand new category that is, well, it's brand new, but it's been underway for a number of years. I would say nearly 20 years that I'm aware of in the United States, where efforts have been in this category. And we've just recently gotten a standard in the past couple of years. So standard covers what I would say is the latest or the most modern in terms of tile. And there's 3 different definitions called out in the standard. There's the back layered gauge tile, or tile panels / slabs. This is defined as a gauge tile or tile panel slab with a material, which is commonly mesh, that's been attached to its back after firing for the purposes of reinforcing. The back layered material thickness must not exceed 20% of the tile or the tile panel slab's thickness. So this is a definition that sits aside from the traditional historic porcelain, ceramic, quarry, glazed wall tile, pressed tile, and so on. This is a newer definition to our industry. Then there's the gauge porcelain tile panel or slab. And this is a tile or tile panel or slab that has been manufactured to a specific nominal thickness and whose thickness characteristics is largely associated with how it is installed or used. So these gauge tiles and tile panels or slabs can be used in both wall or floor applications, depending on the individual manufacturer's recommendations and the build or construction of that particular product. We're also seeing a lot of that in slab format for kitchen countertop applications currently. There's also the tile panel or tile slab. And this is a ceramic tile of a greater size than or equal to 1 square meter, which is approximately 11 square feet. In this case, this is a newer format as well. and you'll find that a product that's less than a square meter shall simply be regarded to as tile. So these particular products are different than traditional ceramic tiles because of their manufacturing method. In many cases, there's less variance to this manufacturing process and less in terms of product quality variance or perceived variance in terms of things like warpage and consistency of the product. So when you're working with these, you want to get an understanding of what they're going to feel like in the market, how they're going to be able to work, what kind of setting materials are required, how they fabricate, and so on. So you want to get to know your porcelain. It's different than the traditional dust press method, which in short, the dust press method is a tile manufacturing method whereby you take a mold and fill it with the powders required to make tile. So feldspar, mica, clay, a variety of other materials that go into the mold. Then they're pressed and compressed underneath the machine like what you see in this image. And that particular process forms a tile, as you can see it coming out of a press or a mold now in this image. And this manufacturing process is one of the most common methods that's found in tile. It's really a part of the market, and it's going to be a major part of the market for many years to come. But this is something that you see in terms of how the dust press tiles are made. There are some limitations to the maximum size that you can find with a dust press method, although in recent years, the dust press technology has expanded pretty significantly, and you see even larger formats coming out in a traditional dust press method. So size capabilities have expanded, and this is a very traditional method. There's a newer method and actually a variety of newer methods, but we'll kind of go high level here. But basically the most modern porcelain tile manufacturing process, these processes involve spreading the same powder, as you can see on the image on the left, across a belt or a conveyor type belt, and then pressed. But since this particular product has no edges to the mold, it doesn't really build up any embodied stress in the panel itself. It's able to fully flatten out naturally, and then after being pressed, that conveyor type belt moves the panel for further trimming, decorating, firing, and then if applicable based upon the thickness of the product would be the mesh mounting process. So what you'll see as an end result of this is a large format tile, as you can see on this manufacturing equipment here. And this particular type of material can come out anywhere from 1 meter by 3 meter to 5 foot by 10 foot. I'm sure there's a lot of other sizes and variances to it at this point in the market. And a variety of manufacturers may further trim it and cut it into what we would call more standard or traditional tile sizes. However, some leave it as full-size pieces in this format for further fabrication on the job site and for dramatic effect, as you can see in the image on the right, where there's a person standing in front of a gauged porcelain tile slab that is actually in a book-matched format, which has a really dramatic look. All of the benefits and even sizes in this case of what you would see in natural stone, but the selection process is a little bit more simple in terms of obtaining a book match. And then the designers at the tile manufacturing company have the ability to essentially edit out any of the blemishes in the stone or design stones that they want to see look better, or create their own looks, whether contemporary, traditional, or the most in terms of elegance. You can also see this material fabricates really well by the example that's shown hanging under the light with both miters and a variety of different facets where the material was mitered and pulled together very tightly. So you can see a lot of capability and technical craftsmanship is an opportunity with these types of products. So further in this overall category of modern tile, you'll find that these sizes are large and really non-traditional. And in all reality, if it's the first you're hearing of them as a tile installer or a designer or an architect, and even a showroom salesperson, these products may sound intimidating. But the reality is that they're picking up steam. They have been for a number of years. The market continues to expand. And I think that the market use continues to expand as well. So there's a number of benefits for these products. And I think the benefits that I'll walk through in the next few slides really help paint the picture as to why these are going to be here to stay, why it's important to learn about them, why it's important to become educated and learn to embrace this new business for us in the tile industry and these new designs from the specification side. So these materials are available in what we would say is somewhat non-traditional thicknesses as well. They're often referred to sizes anywhere from 3 millimeters to 6 millimeters. There's some half sizes that exist in there. And then there's sizes that go upwards of 30 millimeters for certain unique applications. In terms of a comparison to, for example, a 10 millimeter stone tile, you'll see that an average approximate weight per square foot of a 10 millimeter stone tile is going to range anywhere from 3.9 to around 6.6 pounds per square foot of material, of just the raw tile material. Then 2 centimeter stone slabs in the realm of 12 to 15 pounds. 3 centimeter stone slabs, I don't know that I've ever found one as low as 11.8, but I found that number out there in the world of the internet. Much more of those are around the realm of 20 pounds per square foot. So when you're designing and building with that type of material, you really have to do some engineering to think about the weight load on a per square foot basis. But even in comparison to porcelain tile, which 3/8 comes in around 4 pounds, you'll see that these gauge porcelain tile panels have a range, at least approximately, from anywhere around 1.6 pounds per square foot to 2.9. That is significantly lower per square foot than what you'll find with the rest of the gauge porcelain, with the rest of the tile market. These materials have the ability to deliver us one of those things that in the tile industry we don't have a lot of, and that's lightweight materials. So they managed to do all of this while maintaining durability and the ease of maintenance of a porcelain tile. So you get new sizes, new thicknesses, but in a lot of ways the same old porcelain. There's obviously some benefits and manufacturing differences that exist there. But in terms of some of the benefits, I'll talk a little bit about those. It's design and fashion oriented. This is at the core of tile. This is who tile is and what tile is. I mean, of course, it's functional and highly durable and long lasting, which is very important. But tile is known as the most design oriented and fashion oriented of the floor and wall and cladding type materials. So this really helps to continue that. There's some more book matched examples, like what you see in this image here on the right, where the installers are probably removing their lippage tuning systems on a lift to be able to prepare the material for grouting or a sealant, depending on their application. Tile in essentially all formats. One of the beauties to it as well is it's easy to sterilize. This is the case for standard format tiles as well as large format tiles, and for the most part, although porcelains have the lowest level of porosity or absorption level, and therefore carry that designation of impervious porcelain because they have the ability to absorb less than 0.5% of absorption through the test methods that porcelains go through. But these products end up being very easy to sterilize. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of heavy-duty chemicals to neutralize the surface of a porcelain tile. This is really part of the beauty of this type of material. There's also some bioactive options, and I call it bioactive. I think that's the generalized term for some of these technologies like the hydrotectin active that exists within the marketplace. And I'm sure there's a variety of others as well that have a variety of different products, whether it's TiO2 or titanium dioxide or silver that's put into the manufacturing process that allows for a photocatalytic reaction to happen at the tile's surface, which therefore can have some some light self-cleaning type applications or some air cleaning type applications, which make it attractive for some areas in hospitals, attractive in facade applications, countertop spaces, shower applications. So any additional help in terms of a clean and sanitary type of surfaces is there. So you should look into that as well with your tile manufacturers for further information. There's sustainability aspects to gauge porcelain tile, quite a few of them as well. I mean, they contribute towards indoor air quality by not harboring dust. Anything that gets onto a tile sits at the surface. They're known as hypoallergenic, low VOC, and they have a relatively low life cycle cost as well. So they have a long life cycle and a relatively low cost for the overall installation as well. These gauge porcelain tile panels, they're around 80% less weight to transport and stage than a lot of traditional materials. There's a variety of different benefits on that front in terms of that weight reduction. So you manage to maintain durability despite being at this reduced thickness. There's the ability to do a reduced amount of demolition on a job site, which can be pretty sustainable or environmentally friendly as well. If you can take a prior finished surface and make that now a substrate for a new tile, that's got a green aspect to it as well, although arguably that could take a while for that to pay off per project. But there's lower weight, which can mean less engineering for different types of buildings. The reduced thickness facilitates essentially each of those and allows for applications to go for more and more tile over tile or tile over existing materials. There's a lot of flexural strength with gauge porcelain. Gauge porcelain, that flexural strength translates in a number of different ways in terms of impact and flexibility when bending radiuses, but also in terms of facades by taking on a greater wind load level as well. There's reduced grout joints with gauge porcelain, although as grout manufacturers don't necessarily love that. I'm sure that there's some installers and designers that do. But there's also the flexibility of the joint design and the ability to use sealants instead of grouts, or a variety of different grouts depending on the surface materials. So these gauge porcelain tiles have a tremendous amount of benefits to them. They benefit a lot of existing surfaces and existing design, and really help maintain the high end of design. So beyond that, they are highly resistant to chemicals. In some cases, the grouts not so much, so there's still a grout selection process that comes into play for gauge porcelain. There's frost resistance that comes into play for exterior applications, fire and heat resistance that is important for applications around fireplaces, direct sunlight exposure, as well as in exteriors on the facade front and paver front. These materials, all of the gauge porcelains have a high level of wear and scratch resistance, and many of them have a lot of UV resistance as well. There's even some claims for graffiti resistance in the world of gauge porcelain tile as well. So many benefits to designing and specifying tile, sticking with tile. So I would expect that in terms of future applications that continue to be important, you'll see, like you can see in these couple of pictures here, there's a large format tile or gauge porcelain that's been used on a floor application. It's got its lippage control systems about halfway removed in this particular image. But on the image on the right, you can see where the same design has been continued outside. So you have a continuity of design with porcelain tile that's not something that you have with all other building materials. So you can design a floor on the inside of a building, carry it onto the floor wall of an exterior of a building as well, and have a sleek high-end look that looks like it could be quarried stone in that case, or in this case, at a reduced thickness and improved performance over natural stones. So I think that in terms of what's next for tile, really the next and current frontier is these gauge porcelain tile, thin tiles, thin slabs, or just flat out big tiles. So these developments in the production have really outpaced in recent years the development of installation materials. In many cases, they've caught up, and essentially every day of the week, these installation materials continue to catch up further and further. So think about the durability with porcelain every time that you encounter it. It's one of the most luxurious, high-end, and potentially sleek applications or traditional applications that you can have. And this particular trend is going to carry on for many years to come. So you also see applications of gauge porcelain tile as focal points and feature walls in applications in interior design, as well as some in exterior. You'll find fireplace surrounds like what's shown here on the screen, as well as this is being used as a focal point and really a place to emanate class, high-end design, as well as craftsmanship. You can see, again, another book-matched white marble look And you can see incredible amount of craftsmanship to layer all of this up properly, to have a tight joint at the miter, at the corners. And then of course, this design is woven into be a dramatic effect as you enter this particular hotel and draw your eye to it, make you feel good as you're entering the space. And then they've also used tile, the contemporary kind of concrete look tile in this area, as well as you can see on the bottom left, a transition to one of their spaces that is designed to make you feel like you're at home with that wood look, or a wood look floor as well, which at home for me feels like tile. So you can see other applications, shower applications and wet areas, as well as bathrooms, really pose a massive opportunity to continue to settle in these types of gauge porcelain tiles. This particular application that you're seeing here shows 3 different gauge porcelain tile panel slabs, and although it's in a plumbing supply showroom, I think it's evident that this is the front end of design, and tile is selected to complement other major materials in the building and construction process. You also have the fact that this particular tile, is being a gauge porcelain, has an extremely low level of absorption, has a high level of performance. It's got a maximum level of chemical resistance. With the size that it's in, joint repair would be easy enough to do, given its size as well, if the installation ages out certain parts of it. But the product itself is still going to look first class. This is something that's got a low level of absorption, easy to clean, easy to sanitize or sterilize, and the front end of design. So you'll see that in bathrooms as well. We're seeing more and more of this type of material in the countertops in bathroom spaces, anywhere, especially in public spaces that take a lot of abuse. These materials don't show much wear and tear, at least very well. They really don't get exposed to it as much as a lot of the natural stones that get selected for other designs. So you're gonna see more and more of this, I think, from a specification standpoint. It's kind of wild to watch it from a manufacturer standpoint, because in different marketplaces, it's driven by architects or distributor salespeople. And then in certain marketplaces, contractors have identified this as a way to really differentiate their business, to spend less time on their hands and knees, and to install more unique and dramatic effect applications. So the floors, walls, and showers is a big opportunity. Countertops, this is a space that's really coming as well. You think about the approximately 20 pounds per square foot of a 3-centimeter natural stone, compared to potentially as little as 2 to 4 pounds per square foot for a gauge porcelain tile panel. And this makes it a very natural case for countertop applications. We see wainscoting, especially in public spaces that have exposure to some of the bumps. So if you think of a grocery cart in certain applications bumping up against walls, the same for luggage or luggage carts in hotels and hospitals. It's hospital beds and a variety of other carts. There's also a unique feature to this material where you can bend a radius because of certain amounts of flexibility that's inherent in these products. So you can do a radius like the picture that's shown on the right, that allows you to do it with minimal grout joints and minimal cuts to the material. So again, this is a really rather unique aspect to gauge porcelain tile panels. Then I think that we're going to see a continued effort and a lot of focus in terms of tile over tile and existing substrates. There's a number of different ways to address that and to be able to work with tile over tile applications and interior applications. So you'll find a variety of adhesives or primers, and we'll talk more about those in the system requirements and optimization. And then there's also the facades channel that we see more and more tiles specified in, whether it's a direct bond or ventilated methods. There's a variety of these that happen in the market as well. You can see some of these pictures, like the bottom left being a car dealership and the right being a hotel. And then in the middle, some of the things that essentially end up plaguing the installation based on a variety of different conditions, whether it's moisture management or a cap protecting the wall from moisture to get into the back side of the material. But you can see the efflorescence that's coming out of the grout joints. It could be a variety of materials selected or temperature by which the material was installed. But then there's also the fact that the engobe or the kiln release wasn't cleaned off of the face of some of these tiles as well, although that's supposed to be on the back of the tiles. So these types of things all present opportunities for our businesses, opportunities for installing contractors to be able to work in a variety of environments and to be able to work in them optimally. So with that being said, I'm going to move into a section on the system requirements for gauge porcelain tile, as well as a couple of thoughts on how to optimize your installations. And what I will say on the system requirements is that as it pertains to gauge porcelain tile in the current standard, that there is a full day to day and a half course that's required for a lot of this installation. So it's not that you can just attend a 1 hour or 45-minute webinar and be fully up to speed on these types of materials. So there's a couple of different aspects that are called out under 10819, ANSI 10819 that is. For one, it's specifying a contractor that's trained in this type of installation and having the proper equipment. So there's a variety of different places to get this type of training. There's the Advanced Certifications for Tile Installations, or ACT. There's the Ceramic Tile Education Foundation, or the CTI program. There's the NTCA's 5-star contractor program. The TCAA has a program as well, as does the Team IMI. There's also manufacturer sponsored training, both from the tile manufacturers as well as setting material manufacturers. So attending these, if you intend to specify, or if you intend to be a contractor that wants to be on the front end of our industry and involved in the latest and really the greatest types of projects, you really need to make yourself that contractor by attending these programs, or at least be prepared to be passed over in certain specifications when you find these tiles coming down the pipeline. So aside from that, there's the component of the tile for the system. So of course I mentioned that there's the gauge porcelain tiles. We talked already about some of the manufacturing processes. There's the lamina method, the continua method, and then there's also the large format dust press methods that exist in the market. I'm sure there's a few others, as this industry is so rapidly investing and rapidly changing as well. But these products, you're going to find the thicknesses for floors are called out anywhere from 5 to 6.5 millimeters per the standard. And then for wall applications, you'll find the call out being anywhere from 3.5 to 4.9 millimeter for wall applications. And then there's also materials that are larger that could be used on walls as well. It just needs to be taken into consideration the adhesive and fixing methods prior to application. But the point here is that not all of these products are created equally necessarily. You want to get to know your porcelain, know the particular product that you're working with. If it's your first time especially, you want to ask about the techniques for cutting and fabrication, ask about the limitations, whether it's by, maybe it's a flexibility standpoint or a drilling standpoint or a use applicability standpoint. So get to know what brand you're working with. What are those product characteristics and how exactly can or do you need to work with them individually? So know your porcelain is a big key. And then working to address your substrates. So there's a variety of different substrates that exist in the marketplace, and I'm sure there's many more even aside from what's called out in the standard, as well as on most of the manufacturer technical data sheets. But you'll find some applications that are suitable over drywall, some over concrete, cement backer boards, which are so prevalent throughout our industry, through waterproofing membranes, as well as tile, existing tile applications, with specialty adhesive systems, and in some cases, specialty primers, but generally not just a direct bond with mortars. You'll find applications over top of masonry, plywood, existing stones in some cases, aluminum, steel, or even epoxy coatings. For floor applications, the approved methods are concrete, so concrete substrates, bonded or unbonded mortar beds. And then you'll find a few different methods per the Tile Council of North America handbook to go over top of wood framing, which would be the TCNA method F141-15 or F250-15 for stone. You'll find applications over top of existing tiles as well for floors, and then crack isolation and waterproofing membranes as well, although there may be different limitations depending on the type of membrane that's been selected or specified. So again, you want to take all of the information that you've gathered so far, both in your training as becoming a certified gauge porcelain tile panel installer, the tile type, as well as the substrate type, and figure out what your next steps are. So marrying together the recommendation to the specifier at this point in time is critical. Marrying together the recommendation for a GC, or at least other ways to make sure that you're installing properly. So that's where the next conversation comes into play. And of course, you could also argue that this conversation needs to be so far early in the conversation as well, that it's at the point in time of tile selection. So maybe you say that those are being done in parallel, but the ANSI 10819 requirement does also call out that substrates need to be prepared properly, and substrates must be clean, dry, and flat. That's essentially one of the biggest keys here. So when I say clean, if you look at the picture of the hand on the bottom left, this hand was just drugged lightly over the face of a gauge porcelain tile seconds before installation, and you can see that there's a significant amount of either dust from the job site or engobe or kiln release that's left over from the manufacturing process that's on the face of the panel. So this is part of that clean that has to be taken care of on the panel side, as well as on the substrate side. So beyond that, the clean nature, dry and flat nature, free of any voids, projections, loose materials, oil, grease, or sealers, and all other surface contaminants is absolutely critical. So we'll continue to talk a little bit about those over the next couple of slides. But there's a limitation that's been called out throughout the industry as well for the flatness of the substrate. And the flatness is called out currently as 1/8 of an inch and 10 foot is the maximum amount of variance underneath a 10-foot straight edge. Then there's no more than 1/16 of an inch of variance over the course of 24 inches under the same straight edge. So that straight edge method allows you to figure out exactly where the high and low spots are of a floor and what exactly needs to be dealt with to ensure successful installation of gauge porcelain tile panels. So these tolerances are essentially the same as large format tiles, and much of this information carries across essentially all flooring types, whether it's a resilient floor, a click-together floor, hardwood, decorative wear layers need to have about the same type of requirements. So there's a lot of requirements that exist for surface preparation, and I've overviewed for you the surface prep for gauge porcelain tile, but they're very comparable to the best practices in each of the other categories. So this is something that can apply to virtually all types of flooring applications. In the next couple of pictures that you see on the bottom of this slide, you see a variety of self-levelers that have been used to flatten floors. This is a rapidly growing category in the world of surface prep and tile as well, is achieving flat floors. As we have larger format tiles like these gauge porcelain tile panels, and even large format tiles by definition are a tile that has any side that's over 15 inches. So that could be a 4-inch by 16-inch tile, fits the category of a large format tile. That's going to require the same type of floor prep, and often that can be done by the use of a self-leveler. These materials have changed a lot over recent years, and self-levelers have a lot of strength to them in these current days in the market. They have the ability to get a floor extremely flat, which is an absolute requirement when you're working with the large format tiles, as well as herringbone patterns, different Versailles patterns for floors. A vast majority of floors require this type of preparation. So as I mentioned, the self-levelers have really come a long way. As you can see in the picture on the left, I don't know how this passed for surface preparation somewhere around 25 years ago, but it's a trench that was filled with tiles and a white patch, which I think most of us in the industry today would say, wow, how does that get by? But there's a lot more technology available today than there was 25 years ago. Now today, in applications where you see like these couple of images on the right, or the center and the right, you can see a floor that is partially prepared to receive a self-leveler, despite it being in really awful shape. You can see so much what we would call damage to that substrate. There's a variety of ways to address it and fix it. There's now even surface preparation techniques that are available within the tile and stone and flooring channel that again allow you to work standing up as opposed to on your hands and knees, and apply leveler over the face of a surface, and with a fiber reinforcement technique and product that allows for a very flat floor, a floor that could be ready in a single coat application for the installation of gauge porcelain tiles, despite having a very undesirable substrate that an installer walks into. So there's a lot available in the market today that's come a very long way. To go a little bit further on how far the market's come in terms of self-leveling underlayments, there's essentially been a marketplace that has evolved as some self-smoothing, ultra-fluid self-leveling underlayments. And these particular products have a whole lot more flow rate than what you see out of a traditional self-leveler or some of the self-levelers that have been available in the market historically. So in this particular case, you can see that over the course of around 8 foot of leveler from pin to pin in this picture, you can see 9/64 on one end and 5/32 on the other end, which is simply just poured right out of a pail. So a lot of flow to these products. These newer types of cement-based self-levelers have a lot of flow to them. There's a variety of different types available in the marketplace, and these can really help preparation for gauge porcelain tiles and other flooring surfaces be handled in a much smoother and faster way than what you've seen traditionally. That doesn't necessarily mean that all things surface prep can be eradicated. In the case of a lot of concrete construction, you see curing compounds and sealers. You'll find burnished concrete, although there's a variety of ways to continue dealing with those in the marketplace as it pertains to gauge porcelain. But you can see in these couple of images, the top left, a adhesive that has been bonded to a curing compound, and you can see the little reflective areas on the back of this adhesive. So this is the back of a flooring material that debonded, and you can see the curing compound on the face of the adhesive, which is the evidence of that bond breaker or bond inhibitor that caused a failure or contributed to a failure. In the picture that you see on the bottom left, you can also see a substrate, concrete substrate that has beads of water that have been dribbled onto the surface and are not soaking in. That's the same image that you see in the top right of this picture. You can't have a substrate that has no absorption to it and have a good bond, in most cases at least. Now the picture on the bottom right also has the water drop test that actually allows the water to soak into the surface, deeply penetrate the cement, in this case with the concrete substrate, and be a representation that you are ready for a bond. In terms of wall preparation, the same really applies to walls, although obviously you can't use a self-leveling underlayment on a wall. But your surface still needs to be clean, dry, flat. So all the same elements. It needs to be free of dust, dirt, debris, and so on. The maximum allowable variation for a wall application is still the 1/8 of an inch in 10 foot, with no more than a 1/16 of an inch in 24 inches. You'll find that needs to be addressed on both existing applications of, say, tile over tile, which now have primers that exist in the marketplace that can allow for or facilitate the bond of a tile mortar to an existing tile surface, certain epoxy coatings, and a variety of other substrates. So these tile over tile and leveler primers allow for a great high bond strength to be developed ahead of both mortars and patches. And the image you can see on the right, this is one that we know all too well in the tiling industry as well, is that if the drywall contractor is hanging the cement backer board, in many cases they're not hanging it flat enough for certain types of flooring installations. wall installations of gauge porcelain tiles. So the market has also responded with some floor patches that have been modified to be able to handle application on a wall as well, have a tenacious bond that's like the types of bonds required to stick to walls. They could be used over type of those same types of primers and a variety of different substrates. The same type of methods apply in terms of checking your flatness of the surface and the critical nature to it. So as you can see in this case, it's a cementitious floor and wall patch that's used, and this is one of those methods to achieving the flat surface if you don't have control or total control of the wall surface when you arrive on the job site. There's also a few other ways to address surface preparation as it pertains to gauge porcelain tile panels. There's a ability to grind high spots out of a floor, which when grinding high spots, of course, you have to take into consideration the latest in terms of OSHA requirements and job site safety. You have low spots that can be patched with a cement-based patching compound on a spot-by-spot basis. Gouges and voids can be filled with the same type of material in most cases. Sometimes this could be a result of
Adam?
failing substrates. Yes, sir.
Could you turn off your video maybe? We're losing your voice, so thank you. You still there?
Yes, we'll see if that's a little bit easier.
Yeah, that'll work.
Thank you. Okay, so the low spots and gouges and voids could be in some cases a result of failing substrates or impact damage. Those areas can be filled with a patch as well. And then the large undulation that exists in floors can be covered with self-leveling underlayments. So flattened substrates is really a total requirement for protecting a finished installation and making sure that installations don't have weak spots behind the tile installation that could result in cracked tiles or debonding, cracking, chipping, and a variety of other types of failures. Then you also have that this could result in project delays to remediate after the installation. It could be a credibility ding. So adequate coverage and voids in the setting materials and surface prep is essential to the success of these types of programs. From a handling standpoint, and all of this is covered in the multi-day course as well, but you'll see that the materials that arrive on the job site are arriving in a crate instead of a box. So you're not seeing a traditional standard tile box. In these cases, you're finding a full crate like what you see on the top right. These crates, and due to their length, are going to require forklift extensions the way that you see on the bottom left, with a minimum 44 inches for side entrance and a minimum 84 inches for end entrance into the crate. And then you'll see in the marketplace a variety of different suction cup frames that are critical for maneuvering these gauge porcelain tile panels, installing them, and then they'll even hold the material while you apply adhesive or mortar onto the substrate. You'll find that installers have found a variety of their own ways, aside from using the standard tables, although they're still using the systems of suction cup racks for holding the materials and transporting the materials, but building a variety of different substrates or surfaces to work off of so that you can have a flat surface. And then you'll also see that there's a mortar coverage requirement that exists within the industry as well. So this mortar coverage requirement calls out for 80% coverage on any single square foot for wall applications. So in the example of this picture, you can grid the floor or area and assess coverage on a square foot by square foot basis. For floor applications, it's 85% minimum coverage on any single square foot with no voids exceeding 2 square inches. And then of course you have to have coverage supporting all edges and corners. So with these types of mortars, you want to make sure that you're using an appropriate mortar, a mortar that's been approved by manufacturers for this type of use. Follow the correct water mix ratio. and making sure that you never allow the mortar to skin over. Doing so would result in a bond issue. So follow the temperature during installation ranges. Generally, these are called out from 50 to 90. And then the next big points would be dampen your substrates, which is part of your surface preparation, and then combing the mortar both on the tile and onto the wall or floor in order to facilitate a total bond between these two types of materials. So this mortar has to be combed parallel to the short edge, as you can see in the image here, where the mortar is going with the short edge of the tile. You'll find that the suction cup A-frame for the largest tiles is really a requirement. And then that after embedding a tile on a floor, you'll embed by walking small steps down the center of the panel and then from center out to each edge, which is really counterintuitive compared to a lot of traditional tile installation systems. And then for wall applications, you of course have to make sure that you're considering how you're going to access the wall as you achieve higher heights with these panels, whether it's like a lift that was shown earlier, or if it is on a scaffolding or a ladder or a step ladder, depending on where the system has to be installed. But then on wall applications, it could be beat in with a rubber coated beat in paddle down the center of the panel, and then from the center out to each edge, covering every square inch of the material to remove air. Lippage control systems are really a critical part to this as well, or lippage tuning devices. And then the use of a vibrating sander to embed the thixotropic mortars around the perimeters and throughout the field of the tile as well. So a quick bit about the mortars and the way the mortars have caught up a little bit is that, historically when we looked at mortars for the gauge porcelain tile installations, we started looking at fast set mortars, but found out that they were really too fast. They end up curing so quickly that they skin over at the surface before you can actually embed on the floor and or wall, and definitely more challenging on the wall applications. And then with the traditional mortar, you see the long, slow cure time, despite having plenty of working time, that takes days and days and days to be able to cure. There's now a new, more like a rapid curing type of product category that results in cure ranges that are significantly faster than traditional mortars, yet easier to work with and more working time, more open time than the traditional fast setting mortars. So there's kind of an in-between category that exists now in the industry that results in easier workability with gauge porcelain tiles and large format tiles. There's an adhesive method now that's available for the gauge porcelain tile systems. This adhesive method needs to be combed in the same exact manner, going from east to west on a material as opposed to north and south, which is kind of what it looks like in this image. However, in this image, this is just gauging the material off the face of the panel itself, and then they'll go back and comb the material or gauge the material with the short edge of the panel. So this particular type of adhesive provides a variety of different benefits. As you can somewhat see in the image, it's a highly fluid type of elastomeric type material, which ends up providing great coverage on the back of panels and is easily alignable after the suction cup panel frame places a panel on a wall. So the adjustability of this type of material is really, really great, offering more than 30 minutes of adjustability and anywhere north of an hour of open time in some cases, really at minimal around 15 to 30 minutes of open time. So same methods apply. The material needs to be combed only on the back of the panel in this case, as opposed to both the panel and the wall. But you're still going to embed the panel using a rubber grout float, beat in the remainder of the panel with a grout float or the beat-in paddle, a rubber-coated beat-in paddle. Clean all adhesive from the joints and then grout after sufficient cure time has been obtained. So these particular materials and methods allow for a little bit faster of a turnaround, both on the staging aspect as well as on the application standpoint. From an application, it's troweling only half of the material, so it's only troweling onto the back of the panel as opposed to having to trowel on the back of the panel and the wall. So there ends up being a time savings there against a traditional mortar installation, as opposed to what you'll see with doing mortar on a wall surface as well. There's also a minimum or a thinner thickness that's required in terms of the overall adhesive depth. It's around 1/8 of an inch in comparison to a 1/2 inch for mortar thickness, which again contributes to additional less weight for the installation time and a greater increase of repositioning time. So in this case, it's a little bit more than 30 minutes, whereas many of the mortars are in the realm of 5 to 10 minutes. So the material doesn't require any water. You can stage the material exactly where you need on the job site, despite having to chase down electricity or water sourcing. There's no additional dust containment needed for the premixed adhesive type method or the elastomeric adhesive method as well. So both of those contribute to another way to optimize installation. They bring with it, on the adhesive method, the ability to drive a little bit of additional value for the job site as sound and acoustic ratings are becoming more and more important for local codes and IBC, or the International Building Code. But the part of the design of a space in today's marketplace is control of sound, and control of sound can now be done with the adhesive method. It has a chrome rubber built into the adhesive, which allows for the material to maintain its fluid type nature, achieve total coverage or a lot of coverage on the back of a panel, and then not over embed this more fluid adhesive. So this particular type of method drives a lot of value in terms of helping an installer achieve coverage, as well as helping an installer provide a job site, or a specifier provide a job site with a sound reduction gauge porcelain tile system. So as we go to close and wrap up, the final points that I'll make quickly would be in the world of grouts. And in grouts, you'll find for walls, the application size for the grout joint is 2 to 3 millimeters, or a 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch is what's recommended. Of course, you have to obtain a flat, properly prepared surface prior to the installation of grout to be able to obtain that type of grout joint size. We see in floor applications the use of epoxy grouts, whereas in the walls we see urethanes and cements, or we even see some caulk and sealants based products used on walls. So silicone sealants are often one of the products that is turned to because of the wide assortment of colors available in silicone. Not as much, and it's really not as applicable, the acrylic or siliconized acrylic sealants. But then we also see some of the increased usage of advanced hybrid or polymer type sealants in the marketplace, because they have a little bit better or lower reflectivity than what you see with a silicone type sealant. From a floor application standpoint, the minimum joint size is 1/8 of an inch. What we generally see, again, would be that epoxy or premium cement-based products in these applications. And then in terms of these grout and setting materials, there can be a significant amount of cure time variance that exists. So you really want to take into consideration cure times of both the grouts and setting materials, both before grouting and allowing people to be back on top of your floor during the construction process. So this is really a critical nature. This is where those new age type mortars come into play in delivering a faster cure time. Then you also find the need to reference both manufacturer requirements, as well as the expansion joint method of EJ 171 and the TCNA handbook for both wall and floor applications when it comes to grouting and joint treatment. So all expansion joints must be honored. A sealant, a flexible sealant, must be used, and this is something that needs to be detailed by the design or engineering or architectural professional or authority. And they're generally going to be larger than 1/8 of an inch per the recommendations in the EJ 171 methods. So with that, I will move to wrap up. The keys for success to a gauge porcelain tile installation system, and this is important to know because this particular method and material is here to stay. It's going to get larger. You're going to see more and more formats of these materials, more unique designs, being developed every day in a variety of aesthetics. So whether it's that traditional look or a contemporary look, solid colors or stone looks or other patterns, there's so much available in this segment. And I think that we'll see more and more of that over the years to come. But contractor selection is absolute critical. If you're not one of these trained contractors, you really want to try to become one in the years to come and the months to come as you can get into different trainings. You also want to make sure that you know your tile. So not all of these tiles are going to be created the same exact way. They're going to have a variety of different cutting, trimming, drilling mechanisms, handling requirements, and installation requirements to go with individual tiles. You want to make sure that you obtain and leverage the proper tools and products for the project. So that goes not just from the actual types of trowels that are required and the suction cup racks, but also the substrate preparation materials, whether it's primers, patches, levelers, the lippage control tuning systems. If it's the mortars and or adhesives, those are becoming they're critically important as well. And they've really advanced significantly as well to fit more of the needs of large format engaged porcelain tile panels. Then the final would be the grout and sealant selection. This is also important. The grouts have a reason why we see the epoxies specified on floors in terms of their rigidity and their overall uber clean nature to them. And then the sealant applications as well for both floor and walls are absolute must in terms of requirements for these installations. So with that being said, the final point would be to follow the installation standards that have been called out in ANSI 137.3 and ANSI 108.19, as well as any other manufacturer methods. So we thank you all for taking the time to join us today. We really think it's appreciated and important for us to spend some time with the NTCA. We're very appreciative and thankful for the webinar programs that Jim and his team put together. So with that being said, I know that we're approaching the absolute tail end of time. So if there's any questions, we can address those as well.
Adam, I want to thank you for your time. Fantastic information. And for anybody that wants to review this information, share this information within 48 to 72 hours, NTCA will put this on our NTCA YouTube channel. You can watch it, you can share it, you can forward it to anybody you want. So it's a great way to review all of this information. There was a lot. We had a little audio problem, but we worked through that, Adam. Did a great job. I just want you to know that you did a fantastic job. Now, we do have a couple questions here. The first one is, do you think there should be a specific definition exclusive to tiles greater than 11 square feet that are pressed rather than the lamina or the Continuo program?
You know, that's probably a worthwhile conversation point or conversation topic from our industry. The materials and, you know, we try to write these standards to be as all-encompassing as possible at the time that the standards are written, and then the market continues to change and change. This is why it's important, if you would like to have a voice in the industry, to make sure that you get involved and stay focused on involvement so that you can include the thoughts of these types of large panels in the conversation and see if you can be part of the change that needs to be seen. But I do think that because we're seeing other types of technologies catch up or expand into these spaces, that it's worthwhile for us to evaluate that conversation further.
And everybody that doesn't know, if you're a contractor or just involved in the industry and want to attend the NTCA technical committees, we'd love to get an email from you. Anybody can attend and participate. That's where we identify these situations, and if we need to go to ANSI or the TCA handbook in regards to new methods and standards. So great. All right, how do you see the challenge of the increased labor costs affecting the adoption of this material in mainstream, especially residential application?
So I think that one of the things that I've seen, and of course everybody has their own challenges to overcome, from a labor standpoint, whether it's residential or commercial, either side of it. But there's a lot of, and one of the reasons why we select this presentation to go through today is because there's a lot of people that are still intimidated by this material, and they bid as if they're intimidated. So we're looking to try to continue the training efforts as an industry and continue to drive information, get more people to bid these types of projects, and then get the people that are already bidding them to feel comfortable enough to where they're not going to feel like they have to worry about a broken panel on every single job, that they understand how these panels work on the front side of the material, and that they have the ability to influence the design process with architects, designers, specifiers, builders, so that they can do the projects efficiently, properly, and be able to take out costs if there's unnecessary costs in places. I mean, I've seen panels, actually the first project I was ever involved with was at Notre Dame, the university, and the panels themselves were too big to fit on the freight elevator, so they had to go up the stairs to the 9th floor of stairs that go up in a zigzag. So, there's excess cost that we don't all the way understand when we're first involved in projects. And as time goes on, you understand what types of things you need to work with on designers and general contractors in order to be able to reduce those unnecessary or unknown costs that are going to show up on the projects. That can pertain to surface preparation as well. Getting those types of floors and walls specified to be as flat as what's required per the standard is a really important point as well.
I also think that there is a cost to the tools and the investment that you make in those tools. And once this product continues to grow, as it continues to grow, and there are more jobs out there, that investment will pay for itself really fast. And so I think sometimes it's investing in it and jumping in with both feet and just working on projects that have these large panels involved. So that's good. That's good.
And one of the other points that I should say is that, I mean, I would think that as a, if I were on the installation side of the business at this point, I would be looking to make a little bit more money off of these materials as well. Being that's at the front end of design, there is a higher level of investment. It's not like you can just have any old pickup truck to go pick up a 5 foot by 10 foot panel. You have to be invested in this industry, and those investments will pay off over time. And I think that with this material continuing to be a focus and so many sustainability aspects and benefits to it on the manufacturing side, I expect it to really be here in the years to come, which means that your investments now will pay off and amortize over the years as well.
And when the question is on mainstream residential, it may not get to a mainstream residential for quite a while. It might be upper end residential to start with in unique situations that will, as you initially said, these panels are made in large sizes, but many of them are cut down. So maybe you're starting to put, 4 foot by 4 foot panels in a residential home or something like that. So we'll get there. It's just
we'll also probably see it edge its way in focal areas, fireplace surrounds, maybe on the countertop side, because there's a lot of experience on the countertop side of the business that have some, call it hybrid type installers that work in both spaces. And then we may see it come into play in some of those shower surrounds as well. So it's going to go at a different pace, market by market.
So this next question, you answered very, very thoroughly, but I just want to tell anyone as I ask the question, please go to the NTCA YouTube page, and in a day or two, it will be there and you can review this. But the question is there a specific type of grout that is recommended for this type of product? Is there one better than the other? And I think you answered that I think I actually think you will definitely need to check with manufacturers on that, what they recommend for each situation. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, it really depends on the end use space. If it's and I think installers most of the time know this anyways. You'll see, if it's a house flip, I'm sure people are buying a certain type of grout. If it's a high-end home or a business that's exposed to a lot of traffic, they're going to be buying a different type of grout in many cases. What we see is the primary grout specifications is a lot of epoxies on the commercial floor applications, in the applications for walls. We see the urethane grouts. We see the cement-based grouts that have a high level of performance to them. And then we even see, like I mentioned earlier, these variety of different sealants, whether they are the silicone sealants or the hybrid sealants in certain wall applications. So that's another point too, I think, that could be discussed with your tile manufacturer. You can discuss it with the design professional on the site because they know the intended use of a floor or wall. And then you can discuss it with us setting that's a material manufacturers. We'll all have a variety of opinions that exist there. And at the end of the day, we're trying to put you into a good product that has the ability to meet the needs of the space is the big key. So.
All right. I want to thank you, Adam, for a great presentation and for giving us this information. I want to thank all of you that attended and again, remind you, be safe. Look forward to our next invite for our July 9th webinar that will be, our August 6th webinar that will be coming up. And we'll continue educating you. And Adam, thank you. Thank you, Bostik. I appreciate it all. Sure. Take care, everybody.
Jim, thank you very much as well. Stay well.